This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to episode number 113. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 24th of January 2009. Nice to have you with us. Let me begin today's episode with an important announcement. Until about the end of April 2009, I will be reducing the number of podcast episodes. I have an incredible amount of work ahead of me in the next 3 months, and I simply cannot get my work done and deliver a podcast episode every single week. So if you are a listener to the free Project Management Podcast, then please expect to receive fewer and also irregularly scheduled episodes. There may even be a month where you get no episode at all. And if you are a subscriber of the premium Project Management Podcast, then there will be no change for you at all. I have produced a premium episode pretty much every 2 weeks since I started premium, and I will continue to do that. The premium listeners, they are supporting the podcast financially, and I appreciate that. Hence, no change for you, even in this hectic time for me, and you will receive an episode about every 2 weeks. In today's episode, I'm talking with Kristine Hayes-Munson. Kristine was my first ever interview guest, and she has been on the program several times since then. She has come back today because of some recent developments on her team. They have had some layoffs, and her team has lost a number of people as well. How do you deal with that is the question of the day, and many of you may be going through a similar situation. You may be leading a project management team that loses some of its members, or like Kristine, you might be the manager of a team of project managers and the economy is forcing you to shrink. Kristine and I talk about the approach that she has found effective in helping your team cope with such a situation. But first, I have another gizmo for you. I've been talking a lot about Twitter lately here on the podcast, and one of the project managers whom I have met through Twitter is Dennis Stevens. He created the Project Managers on Twitter group, and here he is to tell us all about it. Hello, Dennis, and welcome to the Project Management Podcast.
Hey, Cornelius. Thanks for having me on.
First question I have for you is, what is Twitter?
Twitter is a free social messaging and micro-blogging utility, and you can send updates to each other. The way you set it up is just create an account. You would start following people and put out your own updates. Updates are just messages, are limited to 140 characters. You can type anything you want to, and you can include URLs to provide more detail. So it's a way for people to stay connected in real time and just follow each other's updates and statuses.
Yeah, I always also liken it to the water cooler. And you went ahead and you created the Project Managers on Twitter group. So what is the purpose of this particular group?
In a lot of industries, the rate of change is increasing, and the economy's putting a lot of pressure on businesses. And additionally, through technology, globalization, and innovation, the complexity of change is intensifying greatly. And we've got to get really better at project management to address these issues. Project management is no longer just about controlling budgets and resources. It's about coordinating these complex social and technology issues, right? So there's a lot of PMs out there, project managers out there that are blogging on Twitter, that are blogging and are on Twitter as well. And by its nature, a lot of these people on Twitter are sort of early adopters and innovators. But we aren't having a coordinated conversation. Everybody's talking about how to create improvements or what they're doing or what they see as different. So Project Managers on Twitter is an attempt to add a coordination point to this conversation. And by creating this avenue for the conversations, hopefully new knowledge and experience that's rising up that needs to be shared will get shared by the community and new practices will begin to emerge. You know, what's interesting is historically this has happened through publishing papers and then meeting at conferences. But the refresh rate on this is really slow. It's annually or every 6 months or so. Today, through blogs and Twitter, we've got new content being published every day. And with Twitter, we can have the conversation almost immediately. And the refresh rate on new ideas and the socializing of new practices becomes almost zero.
Can anyone join this group?
Yeah, anyone with a Twitter account and an interest in project management practices can join the group.
And what would their benefits be that they get out of joining the group?
3 benefits that I can think of initially. One of them is just growing your Twitter community. One of the challenges when you first get on Twitter is figuring out whom you want to follow and getting people following you. If you have an interest in PM, you can follow the project management on Twitter's members, and that way you'll get their tweets. And a lot of people will follow you back when you follow them if you've got a decent profile and you're participating. A second one is by promoting new ideas and content. You know, as you read a blog entry or an article or somebody else's really interesting tweet, you can comment on it and publish that to the community, and this will drive some conversation. The third area is just the identification of trends. You know, I know that you're on the PMI New Media Council and that you guys are looking at ways to promote project management through new media. So I don't know what all will emerge from these practices, but if we're on PMOT and we'll sort of see these things emerging, and hopefully as you guys come up with new things, you'll be posting out there as well so the community can be informed very early on about what's going on.
What other features are there for users of this group?
So on the Twit group page, there's a place for links, and one of the things that happens as you're following project management in Twitter is a lot of the same questions come up again and again. One of the things I want to do within the community is start to gather the answers to that. So, for example, you've got some great information on the various software packages that are available and where they might be suitable. It'd be great just to refer them there rapidly instead of having the same conversations again and again. So that's one of the features that would be out there is the ability to go with this. Also, as this emerges and we figure out what's going on, we'll make other capabilities available. I know some of the services that are out there actually have offline groups that they can go to and manage projects and other parts of the conversation to get more detailed. And I know there's some consolidation from some of the other groups that are out there where they'll consolidate all the blog entries and comments into a single read for people. So some of that might emerge depending on what is interesting to the group and what I figure out how to do.
Okay, and finally, what is the URL where people can join this group?
twitgroups.com, group, and then PMOT.
Okay, and as always, we're going to put that link, of course, into the show notes of today's episode. Dennis, thank you so much for coming onto the program and introducing the Project Managers on Twitter group to us.
Thanks, Cornelius. Have a great day.
And here is our Gizmos disclaimer. We do not endorse the gizmos that we present in this segment. We just want to tell you that they exist. Use your own judgment. The companies and individuals who are presenting a gizmo here do not pay us for the privilege. Please stop by at the website and click on the helpful resources link at the bottom of today's episode, which is number 113. And if you have a Twitter account and you decide to join in the fun, then also don't forget to look me up and follow me. I regularly tweet many good PM-related links and also humorous proverbs like the ones you hear at the end of every project management podcast. And now our main topic, the interview with Kristine Hayes-Munson, whose project management experience includes a wide range of business process improvement and information technology projects in the finance, printing, and construction industries. Currently, Kristine oversees a team responsible for project portfolio tracking, project management methodology development, standard operating procedure documentation, audit compliance oversight, resource utilization, division intranet development, and senior management reporting for a 130-member financial services technology department. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcast's feature interview. Today with Kristine Hayes-Munson, PMP.
Hello, Kristine, and welcome back to the Project Management Podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here again.
Me too. You're one of the primary interview guests that I've had. Thank you for coming back. Your team has recently seen changes. Can you tell us a little bit about your team and what those changes were?
Sure. I work for a financial services firm, and I manage a team of project managers, business analysts, developers. We basically do a lot of what I like to call bureaucratic projects for a technology department, the administrative things that deal with regulatory compliance, information security compliance, things that people who are developers don't necessarily want to worry about. They just want to create and have fun, where we want to pose orders and rules around them. So my team, a couple weeks ago, like most financial services teams, got to experience a layoff. And the firm I work for had given a notice that the layoffs were coming, and the next day people began to be escorted out of the building. And unfortunately, some of the people who were asked to leave were people who were on my team.
How did your team react to that? I mean, it must be traumatic to see people, your friends, suddenly being escorted out the building.
The day it happened was obviously very traumatic.
Yes.
And it almost became like a death. And I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about managing change and how change can be managed through the organization in terms of leading projects that introduce institutional change. And as I've been thinking about that, this whole layoff process fell into this very nicely, because it is an institutional change, and it's not much different than institutionalizing any other project. There's someone in the senior executive level who had a project to hit certain budget numbers, and unfortunately one of the ways they had to meet that target was through layoffs. And as I've been thinking about introducing institutional change, what has come to my mind is that the whole change process is exactly the same as the transition curve that one goes through when one experiences a death. And we always talk about death as a completely different change model than what we do on our day-to-day basis. But in reality, as an individual, you're doing the same thing. You're having to give up something. You're having to make a change in your lifestyle or a change in the way you behave. And you go through the same kind of grief curve that you go through as if you had experienced a death.
Yeah. Can you quickly review the grief curve for us?
Well, the grief curve depends on which model you use, but the one I've been using has approximately 7 steps. The first one is shock, just that initial shock and surprise of the loss has occurred. The second one is denial. Oh, this can't be changing. This can't be happening to me. The third one is awareness, where you start to understand that the change is necessary and that it has happened for a reason, and that you really can't go back and undo the change. And finally, you hit 4, which is acceptance, which is willing to let go of your old reality and kind of stepping back and kind of waiting for a new future to emerge, and kind of listening within yourself to see what your next role should be, what your new behavior should be. And then you move up to 5, which is experimentation, where you start experimenting with some of these new behaviors and new approaches that you've been thinking about. Then you come up to 6, which is a search for meaning, so that you understand if this change was a success or a failure, and did it really accomplish what it had set out to do. And finally, you hit 7, which is an integration, or a new set of skills that you've integrated completely into your way of being, and the change no longer is painful for you.
Where is your team right now?
My team right now is probably around maybe the 3, which is the awareness stage. Unfortunately, when a layoff happens, the shock stage obviously happens on day 1 and a couple days after that. But it's kind of hard to be in the denial stage very long, because the people are really gone. They aren't coming back. Some people did reach out to some of the people who had been let go as a person on a friendship level. But it took a couple days to realize that if the person didn't put their code where their code was supposed to be, you had to figure it out on your own. And people started to come to accepting and being aware of the fact that change happened, and now they're kind of headed down to the acceptance stage of figuring out what the new reality should look like, and trying to just sit back and listen to the organization and the business needs of our clients, who are also changing, to figure out what we need to do next.
Mm-hmm. How exactly has this impacted your ability now to deliver all those projects that you had prior to the layoffs?
One of the first things we had to do is we had to sit as a group, and we had to talk about the projects and decide which ones we were actually going to keep working on. Because now that we have lost resources, obviously we can't deliver the same projects and the same schedule. So we basically went through and reprioritized our projects, involved key stakeholders who we needed to involve in the conversation, and basically just took on the whiteboard, took the white marker and crossed off 3 or 4, just off the top of our head, because we knew we couldn't deliver them. And it doesn't mean that we won't go back to them someday as we deliver on the ones that we know we have to deliver on because the target dates are set for other reasons. It just means that we realize that why put ourselves through the hassle of trying to deliver on something and not doing a good job and then developing a reputation in the organization of just doing slipshod work. We wanted to take control of our own destiny and only deliver on the ones that were truly business imperative based on what stakeholder needs, and deliver on those well to our quality standards, because all of us as a team did not want our quality standards to suffer. If anything, it's kind of, I guess, the fallout from going through layoff. We wanted to prove that we could do better quality so that if there was ever future rounds, that we could prove that our team adds value to the organization and would not necessarily be a target for layoffs again.
What I like very much about what you've just said is we had to sit together as a team. It was our decision. We want to deliver this at the quality that we are comfortable with. So you're doing this together with your team as a whole, and which will help you as a team to go through this curve, of course, where you're right now at the awareness level. What tools do you personally use in order to bring your team through this curve?
The most important tool is listening. And you have to set up the environment for the listening to occur before the change occurs. You need to set up a safe environment where people can feel safe coming into your office or meeting you in the hallway or talking to you in the parking lot, wherever they happen to run into you, to communicate. And if that safe environment already exists, then people are going to be willing to communicate and share, and you can listen. And you want to be listening with kind of an 80-20 ratio, kind of the exact opposite of what we're doing here, where I'm doing all the talking. Mm-hmm. The trick is to be...
Well, I'm listening to you, so from my point of view, it is 80-20, right?
Right, but to do a lot of listening and to let them talk. And when you're doing this listening, not necessarily trying to listen so that you can come up with a response for them. Obviously, you want to answer questions as they come up, because it's part of each phase that everybody has different types of questions, and so you want to be able to answer questions that they ask, but you don't necessarily need to listen to say, okay, now the next thing I'm going to say when this person's through talking is this, or try to sell the company line. Sometimes you just have to nod a lot.
So we're talking about the traditional active listening skills that everyone is always talking about: nodding, reflecting, making sure that you understand the other person and help them grow through the change that way.
Absolutely,
is that it?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's an exercise that I would like to take credit for. That was an exercise that I came up with, but unfortunately, it's one that I saw done, and I liked it so well that whenever I facilitate workshops, I try to use it. And it's about listening, where you divide the participants in the workshop into 2 people. So you're in a pair, and the first person gives a topic. It could be anything. Boy Scouts, project management, you name it, it could be the topic. And then the other person's job is just to ask questions and get the person who's answering the questions to reflect.
Oh, without responding themselves or adding their own thoughts into it. Okay.
Exactly. So if the topic is project management, you ask the first question, the person says, yes, I'm a PMP, and I took the test back in June of 2002. Well, then you don't respond back and say, oh, yes, I'm a PMP too, and I took the test back in... No, you say, oh, really? Well, when you took the test in 2002, tell me about your experience.
Okay.
Did you study a lot? That type of thing. And just keep asking the person questions over and over and over again. And it's amazing how people, if you feel like you're listening to them and you really care about their responses, all sorts of emotional barriers drop, and people are so willing to open up and share. And then you become almost, it kind of sounds like a trite cliche, but almost like best friends at work, right? So that you have this bond between you. And it's a very powerful exercise when you do it together in a workshop situation. But it also works very much, obviously, in real life. So when these people come to you and they're in shock because they just saw a team member walk out the door, it's the same kind of thing. Answer questions, but ask them how they feel and listen to what they are saying. And just let them know that you really are really, truly listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see, excuse me, I can see where you're going with this, because you mentioned earlier on building an environment of trust. And of course, when somebody does get laid off, or a group of people get laid off in your team, that means that there is a certain trust that the company has just lost with the team. So you, as the team leader, as the project leader in that sense, you have to step in and you have to help them regain the trust to you, to the company, to the team, and make sure that you can keep moving forward. Is that kind of a
yes
good
and no.
summation?
I don't think that the people, if you handle it right up front, I don't think, and if the company is doing it thoughtfully, and I feel the firm that I've been working for has done it very thoughtfully, I don't think it's a matter of losing trust in the company. Because I think hopefully everyone understands, we spend a lot of time talking about it as a team, understands the business reasons behind why the decisions were made that were made. And there are some very...
You're building trust already.
Right, and
yes.
there are very concrete reasons behind these. And so hopefully you've had a culture that you've developed this trust over time, that you've seen the company make or other managers make good decisions over time. So you have to trust, even though this particular decision is personally painful, you have to trust that they've used the same skills and the same judgment that you've already come to trust and rely on over time.
Interesting. If I reflect on what we've talked about so far, we talked only a little bit about project management, or managing the projects as a whole, the portfolio, which is what you've done. You have cut a number of projects out of your personal portfolio. That was all the project management that we've talked about so far. Everything else was about communicating, listening, talking to people, making sure that they're feeling comfortable. Have you taken any other project management related measures within your team to help moving everything forward at the pace that you have to?
Again, it's going back through that same transition curve. You have to get to the point, and we're starting to head to the point now, where you hit where you're ready to replan. So you make the initial decisions of what you're going to get rid of and focus on what you're doing, and then there comes a time where you have to get yourselves together in a room and start thinking about the future and what does that future look like, and redefine maybe even what the team's vision is. In addition to the layoff, my team also underwent another change in the fact that we had previously already decided, before the layoffs were announced, to split off part of the teams and put it under another senior manager, just so that my team can have a more narrow focus. And so we kind of had the double whammy change, the pre-planned, everybody knew about it up front, we've been talking about it for months change, versus the sudden change. So we just, it's been, the layoffs happened, probably almost a month ago now. And this other change has been in the works for probably up to 6 months. And we finally were able to get in a room today for the first time and really start talking about long-term, what does our future hold? And able to come up with a specific vision for our team that we were able to articulate. And that vision was pretty easy to come up with because it came from one of the senior managers above me, so it was pretty easy. So this is my scope. And then we did the good old-fashioned Post-it note trick. Only a lot of times when I've seen the Post-it note trick done, you do it for tasks, right? So you're going really low and decomposing your tasks. We use the Post-it note trick for the projects in the portfolio.
Just write them on a Post-it, and then you place them on various flip charts.
They put it on flip charts. And we did it based on calendar year. So due
this
date of the
project goes in
project
2009. This goes into 2010. Okay.
Well, we didn't even get to 2010.
Oh.
It was stuff projects because my team does a lot of small duration projects.
Oh, so it's first, second, third quarter.
Based on and then we would and it was really hard for some people to get the gist of put the Post-it note when the project was due, because they all wanted to put it on when the project started. Well, I don't care when the project starts at this point. I care when it's due, because I want to make sure that I don't have 5 major projects due all at the same time. Yes. I want to be able, and I wanted everybody to see the interplay of the projects and how they played out. So just because one person was leading a project to upgrade our SharePoint instance, for example, doesn't mean that there weren't other people on the team who are now going to be involved. So as we picked the target date for when the SharePoint project was going to be, the person who's leading the project, my team is small enough that you do both project management and development. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of dedicated. You don't have a lot of dedicated people. But the person who's the project manager picked the due date of July, I think, in this case, and that meant 3 other people in the room now had to go move some of their other projects around because they knew they had to be individual contributors on that project. And then the same thing happened to the person who was leading the project in that one. Somebody else put a date for one of the projects that he had to be an individual contributor on, so he had to go move some of his stuff around.
And I think that group approach also helps people to move more towards acceptance of the situation, because you suddenly see, okay, my colleagues have been laid off. Yes, they're gone. I've accepted this now. Now let's see how we can shape our environment, how we can manage our projects going forward. Do I see that right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I saw happening was different types of listening occurring now in the team.
Okay.
I found a model from Otto Scharmer, who's, I believe, at MIT, and as he talks about his theory U, and he talks about a listening model, and I like it because it helps you see different listening styles. And the first listening style he talks about is, I already know that, which is kind of downloading and reconfirming. And when we were in the shock stage, we did a lot of that. Just, he's gone. Yeah, I know that. He's gone. Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
And he was supposed to do this. Yeah, I know that. And trying to figure out what was going on. And then the other type of second step is the ooh, look at that type listening, and that kind of took us into the denial, past the denial, and more into some of the awareness stages. Is starting to talk about object-oriented factual listening. Oh, he did this when he was here before. Where would he filed this and look at the code. It was really good here, but there's an issue here that we need to address. And working through those. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then moving on to the more the empathic, oh, yes, I know how you feel.
Oh, so now you've dealt with your own problems, and now you're ready to listen to your colleagues on the team.
Right. Okay. So I'm no longer just my own little world of I'm upset. Now let's talk about how we all feel about this together, and trying to see the world and how the change, the impact through other people's eyes. And the final one, which is kind of where we're at now, so we're just going to start planning where we want to go next. And this is kind of a long one. I can't express what I experience in words. My whole being has slowed down. I feel more quiet and present and more my real self. I am connected to something larger than myself. So it kind of allows you to start being part of, and this sounds kind of hokey, but being part of the universe itself, listening to what the organization is kind of saying, what your client is saying, what the stakeholders are saying, kind of assimilating that. And in many ways, it's a very subconscious process.
Yes.
We talk about letting our subconscious mind work on things and then spilling that out together and having kind of a subconscious brainstorming session together so that we can generate these future ideas and envision what the idealized future would be. If we get through and do all these projects that we have put out for 2009, what is the envisioned goal and what does 2010 look like? Why are we going through all of these steps in 2009? What does 2010, 2011, 2012 look like for us?
Interesting enough, you also had some help from outside your team, people who came and stepped up and began to help, right?
Absolutely. and we try to do the same for the other teams, right? If somebody in the organization had a skill set that could lend itself to supporting another team that was down, people lent their skills back and forth. And a lot of people worked a lot of hours trying to figure out how to get things done in the initial days. And then once we got through the initial problem of figuring out how something worked, then figuring out, again, how to take this now and envision a new future and come up with new projects to make it work more efficiently with the resources that we have.
Mm-hmm. Before we started the interview, you also showed me another quote that you had, which is in regards to involving others in the whole change planning. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's get to the bottom of this.
All right. This quote actually came from a book by Otto Scharmer again. I enjoy reading his stuff. And it was by a gentleman named Nick Hanauer. And he wrote, "You could do almost anything with just 5 people. With only one person, it's hard, but when you put that one person with 4 or 5 more, you have a force to contend with. All of a sudden, you have enough momentum to make almost anything that's imminent or within reach actually real."
Now, how does that relate to your situation where you have a group of project managers and some of them get laid off and you have to now manage this new team?
I think it's a statement of hope because one of the things when you work for corporate America, sometimes you get very spoiled about is just having a lot of resources. And you realize with a small group of people, you don't have to be the biggest team in the organization, and you can even be, and now even as a lean team, you can still achieve the vision that you want to achieve as long as you're working together. One person alone is not going to climb the mountain, but together you can climb the mountain, get there, and accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Has this whole thing brought your team closer together?
I think so. We have a good group of people who have worked very hard to get to the point that they're at now and to see a future for themselves. And I think that they've learned to share things better and to trust each other more and to know that somebody has their back.
All right, final question for you. This is happening throughout the United States at the moment, throughout the world. People are getting laid off. What is your recommendation to project managers and team managers like yourself in that situation? You have a small team of project managers and a certain percentage of them is getting laid off. What is the number one thing that you would recommend that the manager does in order to take the team through this transition period?
The number one thing is to listen.
Okay.
And that has to start before the change happens. Because we're talking about layoffs now, but it could just easily have been all of a sudden we might have had several people resign at the same time. And
we also didn't mention that some of your key stakeholders also got laid off.
That is true. That is true. But you have to have the environment set up ahead of time because you never know when someone who's key to your project will leave for whatever reason, be it the layoff, be it maybe they get transferred to another project. As we did within the organization, we moved people around permanently so that they would help take over new responsibilities. Or maybe someone just finds a better opportunity elsewhere and decides to leave. So you always have to have this underpinning foundation of this safe area, a place that people know that they can come to within your team, and that you as a project manager are willing to listen and to truly listen to them, and then to act on the things that you need to act on based on what they've been telling you.
Great, Kristine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that was Kristine Hayes-Munson and her approach to helping your team deal with losing some of its members. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. And if you like our podcast, then why not forward it to your friends, co-workers, and project management colleagues, or anyone else who might enjoy it. As always, you can find us on the web at thepmpodcast.com. And if you are a project manager who wants to become a PMP, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the Project Management Prepcast, and study for the exam by listening to over 90 podcast episodes from pmprepcast.com. And if you are already a PMP, then stop by at pmlectures.com, where we go beyond just delivering PDUs. We give you exclusive training from the brightest minds in project management today. Please send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com, and when you write, yes, you know what's coming, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. When your project appears to be going better, then you must have overlooked something. Until next time.